or unprepared, it is up to us. That is our choice. And so, what I think is the very crucial and visible importance of the diasporic literature is that it serves as an interrogation point to connect us where we are coming from and to take us to where we are going.
We should not be so afraid that we are going to offend other people. For this reason, we shouldn't say our truth. And our truth in this sense now, we mean, who are we telling this story to, which is, of course, is a fundamental of being able to tell a story. In that when you tell a story, you must know who is the audience you are targeting. So you must try to appeal to the senses and sensibility of those people, because again, this is not a universal conversation. It's a conversation that is geared towards a particular people, and you need to be obvious about that.
How does it help? And I guess what I've come up with so far is it really can be very effective by fostering understanding, empathy, and appreciation for diverse cultural experiences. And diasporic literature reflects experiences, struggles, triumphs, and cultural identities of dispersed communities.
Before I migrated to Italy, or you are the one who were born in your city, or let's say in your quarter, in your neighborhood, then you move from there to another neighborhood within the same city or within the same country, you can see that you are in a journey. You are not just in one place. Even if I were to be in Nigeria, which is my country of birth, I will never live in the same spot that I was born. I will probably never live all my life in the same village that I was born, or in the same town that I was born. So, which means now that we are always in a movement. And that is a good thing too. Because if we remain the way we were when we were formed, we will be invisible almost. That is not going to be a good thing. So yes, all of us, we are in perpetual movement, as it were. And of course, today we are exploring the topic of the diasporic literature to shape the future. And that is important for us, but also important for our children and the world that is going to be after this moment, because people are going to read about us. People are going to ask questions about us. People are going to want to find out something about us. By exploring our literature, by sharing something, we help them to learn more about us. So this is fundamentally important, that we document our passes for them, that we review what we see around us, that will help other people to see through our lenses of what is the reality that we are seeing today. So that is going to be helpful for them, and it's helpful for the entire humanity. So yeah, that's what we are talking about today. So why don't I pass the mic to Nakasha? Nakasha, you'll be away for some time. Yeah. So why don't we start with you? Tell the people who you are and your take on the conversation of the day, exploring the diasporic literature to shape the future. Please go ahead, sister.
Hi everyone. I'm happy to be back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So my name is Nakaja, and I am a business owner of the United Association of Moors. I've also recently published my main book, Played a Game, Hierarchical Simulation, but I've also done two children's books that's on self-empowerment for African diasporic youth specifically. And for the topic, it's a really interesting one. I've been doing recently. I've been doing a lot of like book talks and engaging with people who are writers and in the space of specifically the field of sci-fi, Afrofuturism, and I'm really excited about the field of Afrofuturism as it pertains to the diaspora, because it really focuses on us, on our imagination, right? But I like to look at it from the standpoint of utilizing African history and combining it with Afrofuturism or sci-fi to reimagine ourselves within the future. So it's like we know we're in the present, and a lot of times we get written out of the future, but we can create these futuristic stories, and I think we can do that utilizing literature and a combination of historical facts as well. And a lot of times we had a previous call as to how a lot of times the sci-fi and futuristic shows that we do see, supernatural superpower shows we do see, are based off of a lot of our African history and culture. And so it would be pertinent for us to actually get involved in that space and create our own stories, or emphasizing our own folk tales or mythologies, or whatever you want to call it, fables, and doing it ourselves. I think that we've talked about Star Wars being based off of certain cultures. I think Harry Potter being based off the Igbo culture with the wands, because they have something called the Ofo. What else? Like, they have certain, the thunder god, that they have Thor, but we have Shango in Nigeria. Like, so many different things where they're mermaids, Mami Wata. Like, they're taking pieces of our history and then making this literature and movies and films out of it. But we should ensure that we're doing the same, not only just to make a profit out of it, but to ensure that we're um, preserving our own cultures for our systems and people and youth. So thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Nakasha. That is really important. You see, this is something that I really haven't discussed. I'm not a sci-fi writer, but recently, actually, because I have a story that I'm working on about the Asan people. So I was creating a series, but this series, the first part of it was actually interview series where we talk to different people to tell us about the history of Asan people. But at the point, I was trying to sort of experiment a little bit on writing, on developing character around these people. For example, there is this man whose story actually is yet to come, because there are going to be a series of articles and also a series of video, maybe about 7 of them, because it's a long history, looking at the history of Asian people, looking at the history before slavery even started, looking at the war that took place between the Asian people and the people of Benin. Okay. Sister Gloria, it's your turn. Please do your introduction and your first take on the conversation.
I was just relaxing because I thought my sister Marcia was going to be going.
Well, the cup come back to you.
So you've passed the baton to me again. Okay. Well, greetings everybody. Alafia. My name is Gloria Tinu Ogumbadejo. I'm an ordained minister, a psychotherapist, a writer, an ancestral lineage healing coach. I support African women ministers who would like to add spirituality to their ministry, that's in particular, and others in the diaspora generally who want to make a cultural reconnection, emotional, psychological, intergenerational healing, strengthening their identity, bringing harmony and balance into their lives through ancestral lineage healing, and reclaiming our traditions, looking back to our elders, our ancestors, to gain wisdom, direction, instruction, protection in these challenging, tender times. Well, the topic, exploring diasporic literature to shape the future. I had to think really hard about this and break it down, in my mind. And what does it actually mean? How does it help? And I guess what I've come up with so far is it really can be very effective by fostering understanding, empathy, and appreciation for diverse cultural experiences. And diasporic literature reflects experiences, struggles, triumphs, and cultural identities of dispersed communities. So, by delving into diasporic literature, individuals can gain insights into complexities of migration, displacement, and identity formation. This is so important. Diasporic literature acts as a bridge between cultures, facilitating cross cultural exchange and dialogue. And readers are exposed to a different perspective, different traditions, and ways of lives, fostering a deeper appreciation for cultural diversity. I said to myself, okay, what What does this mean? This exchange will promote tolerance, empathy, and mutual understanding, respect, which are all elements for building harmonious societies. And boy, are we in a place and time where harmony is so important, being in control of our own narratives, changing a lot of the misinformation about who we are. And this is where diasporic literature is powerful. It will provide platforms for marginalized voices to be heard and represented, and we can control our own narratives. This is our time. And, by showcasing diverse narratives and experiences, it challenges dominant narratives and stereotypes, empowering us to reclaim our identities and histories. It's time to put an end to all the things, not to say that everything that's out there is a lie or not true, but we know that a lot of it is. And until and unless we document our own narratives, we we talk to one another, we encourage one another, we listen to each other and others, they will continue to misrepresent who we are. Diasporic literature plays a pivotal role in shaping individual and collective identities. It helps people navigate the complexities of dual or hyphenated identities, African American, British Nigerian, and so on and so forth. And this helps to foster a real sense of belonging both to our ancestral homeland and our adopted countries. This is really important, especially again for our children. By exploring themes of identity, belonging, and cultural heritage, diasporic literature enables people to reconcile their multiple cultural affiliations and forge a sense of rootedness in a globalized world. Diasporic literature also serves as a valuable educational tool for teaching cultural literacy, empathy, and global citizenship. By engaging students and others with the reading, they can develop a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of the world and their own place within it. This is about identity, so important where we are today. Bringing awareness to how we are interconnected is particularly important at this time. And there's a lot of diasporic literature that's available right now across regions and culture. And I will name a few as we go on in the conversation. So I'll pass the mic over.
Thank you so much for that, Mrs. Gloria. But this is really very important, the conversation of the day, in that if you look at where our research is coming from, which is a research about the presence of Africans in northern Italy, which of course we started sometime in the year 2013, sorry. We will say now that our intention is to document the experiences of the African people in this part of the world. In the course of that research, I will go to different places, particularly in northern Italy, to present this research, where I have written 2 books, went to different schools, university, cultural centers. I remember going to as far as Gorizia. Gorizia, in different parts actually, going to participate in debate, talking about our story, our experiences. Because I look at the individual I was talking to, I was interviewing in this case, because we have the character, and then we have also the audience who were experiencing this character, their story. Of course, their story now through what I have done, whether in terms of video or in terms of the book that I will eventually leave for them. I can say that it actually opened up the opportunity for me to be able to explore what I'm doing today. And I find it to be really very interesting in talking about our experiences. Even in the area of school, in education, in market, in workplace, there are experiences that we are living every day that we need to take time to explain to the people we are cohabiting. What does it mean? How do we feel? How do we see what is happening around us? Of course, there are people who we elaborate what they are seeing in form of music, in that they will sing. You know, the African diaspora, I want to stress, it sometimes living under an extreme pressure from the society, pressure from the fact that you are not living among your people, you are being away from your people, a pressure for the fact that you are suffering from different type of racism, whether from the sound of your voice, which is different from the sound of the local people, who then will ridicule you. You see, all these are real for a lot of people, and they are not self-explanatory. They need individual to take up this argument and elaborate on them. And sometimes we need to go to places like cultural center, bookshop, cinema, go to places like schools and participate in debate to explain this is how we are seeing it. And of course, some individual can also put this into writing in a book and share with people to help them understand this is my feeling. You see, we cannot hide our feeling. It's fundamentally important that we let the people understand that you have a feeling, even as an immigrant or a diaspora, a person who is not living among your people of origin. It is important that we take the time to shape that particular narrative. We cannot allow other people to do the job for you. You are going to be the one to do it as a member of the African diaspora, because there are a lot of things that are not self-explanatory. We cannot leave it to be self-explanatory. We need to take the time to explain it. So by explaining it means we are shaping the narrative, the future. If we don't do it, then it's going to be disadvantageous for us, for our children, and those who will be here after that. Of course, I could share some experiences of that with you, but I will leave that maybe for another day or maybe later in the conversation. Now, I pass the mic to Dr. Marcia. Please share with us.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good night, good evening, depending on where you are in the world. It is my honor to be here. I am Dr. Marcia Thomas. I am a author, and I'm also a writer of children's stories. I'm a published author of children's stories, but it's in the form of textbooks where I share children's experiences and have them interrogate their own experiences for critical thinking, problem solving, and for reading and phonics. I am a owner of a small business, consulting and coaching. And as I founded that business, it was in the intent to assist Christian career professionals and also female leaders to navigate successfully trauma, personal and workplace trauma, and emerge as resilient trailblazers. I find that I listen to stories in that capacity as a coach, a trainer, an author, motivational speaker, and also a consultant, that I listen to stories. And as I listen to the stories of persons, because your life story, your trauma, your experiences, your perspective, and how you view the world are your stories. And I listen to their stories and I use their stories to shape their future and to secure outcomes for them and also to change their lives because they invest in me to do that. I find that this topic, by its very nature, is very pertinent because the future is where we are going. The world in itself is not a static place, it is a very dynamic place. And we take ourselves into life because we do not live life as it is, as we want it. Sorry, we live life as it is. So whether we want to, once we are alive, we are going to have to exist in the present, in the now, and in the future, because we, as we grow and as we develop, we are a part of the future. If we are prepared or unprepared, it is up to us. That is our choice. And so, what I think is the very crucial and visible importance of the diasporic literature is that it serves as an interrogation point to connect us where we are coming from and to take us to where we are going. It is also a reference point. It is not necessarily a residence, but it is a reference point because this story, this literature argues confidently and convincingly, and also forces individuals to understand that life is not how you think it is. Life is really here and existing. It challenges these assumptions that we have then about life. And it is important for those who have emerged from their history, moved out of the framework of their foundation and of where they have grown up, to connect the dots that are missing, because some persons are not even emerged in their history because they do not live and breathe in that environment. They hear of these environments. So the onus is on us to preserve these literature in their authentic context, location, and perspective, and make sure that these authentic and real life experience from the viewpoint of those who know it, have experienced it, who accept it, who love it, and who continue to build on it with an understanding and a holy respect that makes it come to life for the future. It is held intact. And that is what the literature does in relation to the future, because it challenges our assumptions and it frames our understanding of self and how we turn up and how we deliver ourselves and how we exchange and how we survive. And for that reason, I believe with all my heart that it must take its rightful place, because it is really the legacy of who we become. The diasporic literature takes us from being to becoming and being again. Because when you know your history, when you understand your roots, then you are able to confidently navigate your present and actually prepare for the future. That is where I want to end this start at this point, because we cannot ignore the valuable opportunities that literature offers us individually and collectively to shape our future and to preserve what is important and authentic and personal in us, and also allows us to inspire change, change in ourselves as we adopt and embrace because of who we are and the power we are given by these literature, sorry, and how it promotes continuous dialogue and positive, inclusive, and equitable exchange as we connect across the worlds and across destinies and across purpose.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Matzia. Yeah, it is an important conversation. It is an important conversation for me, and it is an important conversation for the entire research, for the project, and for what we are doing here today. This also is a testament of the validity of the project itself, of the conversation that we are having today. Because when it started, I want to just touch on that a little bit. The idea was to sort of document the story of these Africans living in Verona and in other parts of northern Italy. But we soon discovered now that we can actually leverage the power that we have today in 2024, or say the time that we are living in, which is the use of technology to be able to connect. And this connection is particularly important for us as people of African descent that are scattered across the world. In fact, we are looking for a way to make sure that language is no longer a barrier for us, so that we can finally come to learn more among ourselves, and to build our strength and to leverage each other's strength and to build businesses together and to be there for each other. This has only been a dream for many, many generations, but for us, it is a reality. It is a reality that today you are somewhere in France, you can hear how members of the community that are living in the UK are living their experiences. Those in the US are living their experiences, and those in Canada are living their experiences, and those in Italy are living their experiences, that we can all connect to one another and share our experiences. So this is really an important thing for us to do. So I think it is very good that we use the power of the time, which is to use the pen to document our experiences. Sometimes it can also be very challenging in that we train a very delicate line sometimes in how do we manage to have a balance in our narrative. Because generally, artists will have to be criticized in some instances. Because maybe when you tell your story, you come to offend some people because maybe the way they feel about it, the way you say it might be slightly different from them, and therefore they will come to criticize you. And of course, if you're an artist now, you know this is going to happen. There is no way you can avoid it. But how do you know when to say and what not to say? How do you, most importantly, guide your community to make sure that you are telling the truth? I think Dr. Mansia was referring to that just now. Be authentic in your story because it is going to be important. So that despite the fact that some people are going to be hurt, you are still going to say the truth. It is important. So from there, I like to pass the mic to Nakasha. This is the reason. You see, you were touching something very important because talking about futuristic approach and the sci-fis and the rest of that, that is going to be very important for our children. For example, we need to make sure that in the bookshop, in the market, when they go to buy books, they will be able to find literature that talk about something relating also to them, or at least where their parents are coming from. You don't want to give this job to the European, somebody who went there maybe on a visit, on a holiday, and they suddenly become expert in African history. That is not going to be their duty. This is going to be the duty of the African diaspora, people who were either born in Africa or born in the diaspora, who have a direct root, a direct heritage to what we are referring to as African motherland. So it is then that we tell this story. You talk about the story of Shango. All these are our story, but we're going to tell the story and we're going to tell it well. So what I want to ask you, Nakasha, is how do we make sure that we keep the balance? We don't overly offend people, but we also remain authentic in the story that we are telling. Please help me.
Okay. I think that's an interesting question. I don't think particularly for my creations and how I like to pursue my imagination, I'm worried about offending anybody per se. I think my biggest goal and aim is to create content that empowers people that look like me, my community on a diasporic level. And if that offends somebody, and I think that that's their problem, that they should like have to try to discover and dig deep down in their own hearts and souls and minds to figure out where that is coming from, and it's probably from some type of socializations, but no one has been concerned about the offense that has been given towards African people in different ways, right? And so there's one woman, and I'm forgetting her name, but the book that she has is When It Rains Colors, and she had started writing this Afrofuturistic book in 1994, and she just finally published it in 2022. But it's a really fascinating book because it really makes us reimagine our ideas around beauty and thinking about beauty standards, especially when you're socialized in the Western world, because a lot of times beauty standards have been white hair, blue eyed, blonde haired woman, or white man, whatever the case, blue eyed man, blonde hair man as well. And so that is the basis of white standards, not only in America, but in other places too, right? So you even have in Asia, right? They have like a lot of plastic surgeries that are going on. But what she does in this book, When It Rains Colors, is she creates this African planet that is based off of African histories like that are coming from, I think she said, Swaziland and Zambia at the time. So she's picking up on a few things, but reimagining this Black planet. And it's where Black is seen as something that is the most beautiful. And the darker you are, the more powers you have and the more beautiful you are seen. And her target audience is, of course, the African community, to get them to reimagine and think of the features you have. They are beautiful, and we have to reimagine a world where that is celebrated and start to celebrate it in our own communities, right? And having different descriptions that can describe the richness within the color. And something so simple of self-love, you would think like, of course, but that's not, something that's embedded in certain environments and cultures when you grow up, especially if you're socialized in a Western world as an African person. So it's a very beautiful thing. And that may offend white people, right? People who don't possess as much melanin on their skin because they're pheomelanated, right? Because it's all about pigmentation of pheomelanin or eumelanin, right? So there's, of course, going to be people who are offended by it. But where were they when, you know, we're getting demonized the darker that we are, the Jim Crow laws, or being darker than a paper bag? Like, so I don't think that's my problem, to be concerned about someone who is offended by the work that I do. My problem that I intend on resolving is self-empowerment of my people, so we are able to build communities that resolve the problems that are happening within our environments. I hope that answers your question.
It
Thank
answered
you.
it perfectly. It answered it perfectly. So yeah, I will. That is a very important conversation, important point that you raised there. Yeah, we should not be so afraid that we are going to offend other people. For this reason, we should not say our truth. And our truth in this sense now, we mean, who are we telling this story to? Which is, of course, is a fundamental of being able to tell a story. In that when you tell a story, you must know who is the audience you are targeting. So you must try to appeal to the senses and sensibility of those people, because again, this is not a universal conversation. It's a conversation that is geared towards a particular people, and it need to be obvious about that this is the people you are targeting in the story, without, of course, necessarily demonizing every other person around you. And because I don't really believe that for a story to be well told, for you to protect something, you need to destroy another thing. I don't know if Mrs. Gloria have to say anything about that. In where you are in UK, where you are right now, you hear people talking about culture. Some people, of course, believe that their culture is the only thing that should be discussed, and whereas yours should not be discussed. And like Nakasha was saying, you can be angry. It doesn't concern them because you are a minority. And now you are going to tell that story. How should you approach it? What should you do to make sure that your people's voice is heard? Can you share with me?
Thank you, Brother Obehi, and thank you for all the speakers to date. It's wonderful to be with great company, and also those who are in the audience listening. Thank you for being here. You know, for a long time, I've been in the UK for a few decades now, and prior to that, I lived in the US, and I found most of the time I was apologetic, or rather, I felt my story wasn't as important. It's not. Or I couldn't be eloquent enough in describing my story. And it's not until I've come to this stage in my life and I've started the work that I recently started doing, which is about ancestral lineage healing, that I it suddenly dawned on me that what a disservice I'm doing to my people who have paved the way for me, a disservice to the legacy of my family, a disservice to my children, who actually were the ones who told me I have a story to tell. And once I some of that, I have to put my hand up, might have been internalized racism, um, thinking that my story wasn't important enough. From the moment I stepped into the glory of the work that I do and my divine consciousness and full acceptance of who I was, but even more importantly, the honoring of my ancestors, which really is what has spurred me on. I suddenly took on the full meaning of my ancestral name, Ogun, which is a god of thunder, war, where my people are warriors, which is I want to tell my story. Whoever wants to hear it, you're welcome to. If you don't, step out of my way, because the people who need to hear my story will hear it. And I have a duty to tell the story. All of us who are here, collectively, individually, I'm sure the stories that we have to tell would be magnificent. I mean, I think the most important thing for me is an acceptance, full acceptance of myself, who I am, my people, and the love that has come from deep within me to the surface, which people tell me they see, when I'm coming. It's like I'm coming with my stories, and I'm unapologetic about it. Talking about offending people, we have been offended for centuries. So it's not about tit for tat trying to offend anyone. It's just about I want my story to be told, and my narrative. I want to control it as much as I can. I was looking at there's a lot of diasporic literature that's available across regions and culture. And I was looking at my bookshelf, and just to see what is already around, things that I hadn't really considered as diasporic literature, but really is. And some of the books, if you'll indulge me, I just want to mention a few. Some of you might have read some of them. Americana by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, that wonderful Nigerian lady, which offers insights into the immigrant experience and complexities of belonging in a globalized world. Many of us knows what that is like. We have variations of this story. Beloved by Toni Morrison, exploring the trauma of slavery and its enduring impact on African American identity and familial bonds. There are similarities, in those stories that we all probably, may be able to pick up on. Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, my brother Obehi. I think that's one of your favorite authors.
You can say that again.
A seminal work in African literature, skillfully portraying the complexities of Igbo culture and the devastating effects of European imperialism on African societies. All of us probably can pick up things that are within those stories. Our stories are out there already. We just need to add to them. Again, Half of a Yellow Sun by Adichie, she portrays the human cost of conflict and the resilience of the Nigerian people and the tumult of war. There's war out there now. We can talk about how we're all connected, that which is another thing that we have to understand, the interconnectedness of us as human beings. What stories do we have individually and collectively right here in this room that we could already tell? There are lots of other diasporic literature. Purple Hibiscus by Adichie again, exploring themes of family, religion, and political oppression in contemporary Nigerian society. These are just a few examples that offer a glimpse into the diverse, rich literary landscape of the African diaspora, showcasing the breadth of experiences, voices, and perspectives with the African diasporic community and others. So, in terms of, you know, how do we step into our glory? For me, by embracing, like I said before, my humanity, by accepting all of who I am, the messiness that comes with me, the glory, and the fact that I have something to say and something that I feel the world needs to hear. And I want to say it individually and I want to say it collectively. I pass the mic over.
Thank you so much for that. That is great. That is so great. I can feel the line. It is very, very important that we are unapologetic in our story, because this is our story and we need to really say it the way it is, irrespective of who might be offended in our experience. That is very important. I think we need to take that home as a message, in that our story is our story and we need to shape it the way that it makes sense to us, the way that it reflects us, the way that it glorifies our image in the world. If that offends somebody, we're sorry. We need to tell our story. The message is driven home. Now, there are some times that because we are living in the diaspora, we are having other culture mingling together. Sometimes we might really need the instrument of analyzing what is happening to us to transmit the message for other people to understand. It doesn't necessarily mean people from other culture. Let me give you an instance. I live in a city called Verona, which is in the northern part of Italy. The people that are living here of African descent are very many. Okay, many, yeah, that can be an understatement. But these people of African descent that I actually referring to a number of times in my presentation are not from the same country in Africa. With me, they are not all Nigerians. And the consequence of that is that we don't speak the same language. We don't also use the same cultural references, because Africa is not just one country. Yes, we are a people, but sometimes there are also diversity in us. So that when we are living this experience and when we are talking among ourselves, sharing our experiences, we need to be able to elaborate on our situation so that people can understand us. So this is where I want to go with Dr. Marcia, is how do we develop this ability to be able to express ourselves? Because I think it is important. Not everybody can do this. I want to repeat that. Everybody should do this, but not everybody can do this. So I want you to speak to the effect of developing the ability to tell our story so that we can shape our future. Help me with that.
First of all, let me say, as we tell our stories and present our literature and interface with the literature, we want to remember, and Chinua Achebe is one of my favorites also. Things Fall Apart and all of those other books. I have all of those in my library. And I will never forget the way that he presents resilience and authentic, and how authentic we ought to be and unapologetic. And I am with all the other persons who have spoken about being your best self and showing up as you are. Because sometimes, no matter how, I learned when I spent some time in Canada that you have to be 10 times as good as the worst person there to be seen as somebody of credence. Your accent is an issue, your expertise is an issue, your experience is an issue, your delivery is an issue, because you are just not expected to have quality stories and to tell your stories. And there are similar instances when you work outside of your space and outside of your foundation, and there are limitations that are placed on us even when our story excels and stands out, and it's a story of authority and of resilience and power. And I find that what I hold dear more than anything is that your dignity cannot be given up unless you surrender it. You cannot give. No one can take your dignity from you unless you surrender it. And that's one of the things that we need to remember when we are telling our story. I am who I am. I am enough, my greatest asset, and I have nothing to be ashamed of. The only limits is what I placed on myself. And whatever my purpose is in life, it has already been established by the very virtue of where I was born, how I was brought up, my experiences, and my context and location that I am at presently. So even if it is not exactly what you would have in your mind because you of your limiting beliefs and the negative way you speak over yourself, the self-doubt that you may have, the procrastination, the nature of how you respond to your experiences, know that you have been prepared for where you are and that the place has been prepared for you. If your mindset comes with that confidence and clarity that I am here to serve a purpose, then your story will become a part of you and become relevant enough to share unashamedly and also unapologetically. What is the problem is that we must understand when we are to tell our story, who is to hear our story, and the parts of the story that are to be presented at a particular time. Because our story, because it is our story, and because it frames us, and because we are not ashamed, and because we are militantly breaking down stereotypes and pulling attention and giving ourselves relevance and significance, we feel that persons must hear the story wherever we go. But when you go to the table, you must be present at the table with the relevant and significant parts of your story that will allow you to accomplish the mission that you are there for. And sometimes we tell all the truths and we underestimate ourselves because our story loses its authority, its significance, and its reach because the parts of the story that are told are not the parts that are needed. And so, one of the things we must be very cognizant of is where pulling from our story the parts of our story that will serve the greatest purpose, will fulfill our mission, and will add the value that it is to add. And so you will be telling your entire story, but you will, the time and season and the place and the context will always be different. And so, because it is your story, you can always amplify the parts of your story that make sense where you are at. And some of these things are what we need to do. We need to harmonize our story also. Harmonizing our story means that we look at the all the parts of the story and pull from the story the messages for ourselves, the empowerment for ourselves, the courage that it gives us, the meaning that it gives us, and translate that meaning in a very purposeful and intentional way. And so you're not leaving out the details, but you are not presenting the parts that are unnecessary. The parts that if you tell a part of it, will those parts will come together. You must be able to deliver your story in a way that ignites curiosity, trust, and respect, that you are authentic enough and that you are practical enough and that your story is relatable enough to connect you to the right persons at the right time with the right skills and opportunities and open doors.
But anyway, the message was driven home. I think we got it, and we got it on record. So I really want to thank you so much for that. That is fundamentally important. Of course, all of you that are speaking here, I'm getting a lot of value out of that, and I understand that also the audience, those that are listening, and those who will listen after to this record, they are going to have a lot of value from that. So thank a lot, and of course, I thank all the people in the audience too. I see my very good friends and faces out there. Thank you all. I can see Bill Hosty. Thank you. Yeah, we are working on the episode that we did. They will be coming out very soon. I see Rene. I see Yasu Tafari. Thank you so much, brother. We're happy to see you. I see Vanessa. I see Violet. Irene. Thank you so much for coming. And I see Shirley All right. Now, the point is that we need to make peace with ourselves. We need to reconcile with the source of the story that we are sharing with people. I think this is important because our story, if we are genuinely sharing our story, we have authority to it, we have ownership to it. It is the best place that we can always establish our originality, our be owner, the rightful owner of the story that we are talking about, because that is our story. If you use a preamble, you can use different elements to bring out that story because that is your story. Nobody else can become more expert in your story than yourself. It's like somebody saying, I know you better than you know yourself. If that is the case, we need to find out what is happening. You should know yourself better than other people know you. Anyway, that is just by the way. All right, I see Loretta in the room. Thank you so much for joining us. Please, the mic is yours. And you know the drill, the conversation is exploring the diasporic literature.
Absolutely. I truly understand. Thank you so very much. Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited about the conversation you're having because I am of the diasporic. My home is New York, but family's from Jamaica. So the lineage, the relationship and connection is impactful and powerful. I just wanted to share from a literary perspective is when we are identifying the authenticity of our voice. First of all, we have to realize that it has been the dominant that has removed us from our authenticity. Once we understand that the dominant has done that and we are reclaiming, and I come to you to speak through post-colonial anthropology. That's where my PhD work is in, and how we've rearranged and reshifted thought in how conversation takes place. And I was listening to Dr. Marcia, and she was very exciting what she was saying. I would like to add to that because what needs to be established to give one the level of authenticity and credibility of conversation is context setting. By developing your context setting, by letting the audience know that your foundation is, for example, when I come in and speak, I let people know where my construct comes from because it gives them a grounding from where the conversation is going. It also allows them to know that I have confidence in what I am saying because it is authentic. It is me. So yes, I am a person of African diaspora that reside and is a United States citizen, but historical lineage is Jamaican and ancestral lineage is Africa. I put that out there. So there's no question about where this conversation is coming from. And there's no question about who I am or who I think I am. I've informed you. Then what I do is I go into a baseline of what the conversation will be about. And the reason why I do this because of the multiplicities and the multiple levels that I've been able to speak publicly, I find that there's a new generation coming forth that is not grounding their discourse in a foundation. Without grounding in the foundation, the conversation gets lost. And then you don't think, well, what are you talking about? So based on that context setting sets up the conversation. It also directs the questions that will be coming forth because as the speaker, I am guiding the path. And that's what I wanted to share. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for that, Loretta. That is so important. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right. Now, I'm thinking that sometimes, in fact, almost all the time, because all the books that have been mentioned here, whether you are looking at Things Fall Apart or the book by Morrissey or any other book, you take up a giant literature icon like James Baldwin. Each of them, they have to contest the establishment. They have to contest the popular opinion that people are living by. So where I'm going there, I'm trying to sort of ask what do people think about that is when you need to contest situation like that, which of course you have no way of avoiding, except maybe you are going to be telling a superficial story. And we don't want to tell superficial story. We want to tell real story. And real stories are usually characterized by the depth, in that you are going down to the really source of the story, and it shakes up things sometimes because you are shaking the fundamentals. When you do this as a diaspora, and of course, in this case, you are going to be touching the Western establishment. Say, for example, you want to talk about the issue of unfair trade. Take a book, for example, like a book written by Walter Rodney in 1972, How Europe Would Have Developed Africa. That is, of course, that is also another great book about the diaspora, no? You can't simply pretend about that. I mean, you can't simply pretend that, okay, let's be friendly. We never talk about that. Okay, let's just say the bygone be bygone. No, we need to really go to the root of that argument. So that what I wrote, for example, giving an analogy saying, making a comparison between Ivory Coast and Ghana, which are just two adjacent states. And then looking at Abidjan and Accra, which are also two adjacent cities. To make his case, Rodney said that if you are in Abidjan and you need to move from Abidjan to Accra, which are just two cities very close to each other, you will have to move from Abidjan to Paris, Paris to London, and London back to Accra. That doesn't make any sense. That is going to offend somebody, like I was saying before, and we know that. But we're going to do it anyway because we are talking of our story. This is our experience. This has happened. This affects us. It affects our psyche. It affects the way we behave. It affects the way we are seen in the world. So, as a diasporic literature or expert, you are facing all these challenges. When you need to deal with issue or face something that is already unestablished, but you know that it is not true because it doesn't reflect you, doesn't reflect your people, it doesn't reflect who you are representing, like in the case of the book I just made mention of by Walter Rodney. How do you deal with it? Share with me.
Yeah, I think I've had more challenges of frustration in the beginning of the process, but as I the intention of me writing my book, I'm sorry, let me turn the intention of me writing my book, Play the Game Hierarchical Simulation, was to be able to compile my experiences of how I've dealt with different experiences, whether it was racism, whether it was microaggressions, whether it was observing the economic crisis that was going on in my local area of Washington, D.C., but also on an international scale of thinking about trade as well, and compile it together to be able to present a case to the members in my community. Um, not so much for, I guess, non-African people, but more so for African people, I think is my biggest target because of the misinformation and miseducation that has been like increased over the years, and a lot of people just aren't interested in learning about their history and learning about Africa in general and what's going on with the policies and the economies and how what we consume in America does have an impact on the international scale. That was more so my focus, and the book makes it easier for them to also look at these case studies I'm looking at from a historical perspective of having all these different people, our ancestors who've done the research, but also this is a modern day person. I'm 22 years old. I'm a veteran. I've been in the military. I've worked with students. I've worked in the government, and I continue to do social enterprise work, and I'm looking at how they strategically discriminate against African businesses when it comes to grants, or I'm seeing how. Hello, can you hear me? Okay. I'm seeing I'm seeing how. I'm sorry, someone is calling my phone. So I'm seeing how we are consuming a lot of different things that are impacting other countries, but we're not talking a lot about it, right? So when we're thinking about our technology with the advancements of cars and batteries and all these different things, but people aren't connecting it back to the resource trap that they try to teach us about in Western education on the more resources you have in a country, they're unable to manage it. So we have to come in and manage it for you. I'm educating my people on that and introducing them with these ideas for them to think outside of just having a job and being oppressed in that ways, and also becoming their own oppressor in their oppression, but to imagine a world where we're being conscious thinkers of what we're consuming and actively making choices and decisions that gets you out of that. And so that's where social enterprise goes in. So I think a lot of my work is rooted in reimagining, right, and understanding the power of ideas and the power of community. And I think that's like my focus area. But when people are bringing up things that are kind of out of line, like saying like, oh, history is so long ago, then I present them cases of why it's not so long ago and how a precedence has been set on each other. And so it's important for us to learn from this history, because it does impact not only our present, but it also will impact our future if we're not paying attention to this. And this is why when we're thinking about laws, it is set on a precedence. You have to look at previous cases in order to get a judgment as to what is going to happen. And you can maneuver from those cases whichever way you want with the language. That's what lawyers are doing, but it's on a precedence for a reason. And I think a lot of times people disassociate that because of our education systems are so poor. People don't like to learn history and because of the way it's been presented to them. But if we represent it in a way that allows for them to be critical thinkers, then we can change the game entirely. And I think that's my focus on it, right? And I can because I'm confident in what I've observed, what I learned, but also my experiences. Because, like I said, I have a lot of experiences for someone that is so young. I'm able to have an engaging conversation about it, and I understand the difference between me going against the other person that is saying something that is inaccurate versus us both like understanding the issue at hand and breaking it down. So I think that I am on a journey of mastering that skill of getting people to understand, like, hey, this is the issue, big branch issue of racism. Tackle the issue of racism together. Let's not go back and forth with each other. Let's get a better understanding of what this actually is. What is colonialism? What is imperialism? What is um, economic extraction? Like, what are all these big terms, and how can we understand it so we can come together in a conversation where we're actually being productive and getting a solution that's better for everybody? And that's the type of work I'm trying to do within my community.
Thank you so much for that. Yeah, that is highly important because we need to look for a solution at the end of the day. Yeah, there are the problem, but how do we find a solution to the problem that we are dealing with at the end of the day? Yeah, somebody might even ask the question. Now I'm moving to Madam Gloria. A question like, why the hassle? Why do we need to do all this study, this story about the African diaspora literature? What are the real value for it? What would you say, Madam Gloria, if that question were posed to you?
I mean, the value is already seen in the literature that is available already, which which is also an indication of how much we need to educate ourselves. You can only two things: speak on what you know, either by experience or by uh, passing on of knowledge and information. So, and thirdly, something that you have pride and belief in. I'll give an example. I was invited to, since I've been doing the work of ancestral healing, I was invited to speak at a white organization the other day, and they said that my work has been observed, and they wanted to introduce African spirituality to the students. And I said, that's I'm delighted, but to let them know that if I do give a speech, it's going to be on my terms. I'm going to give the talk in a way that I feel represents who I am, my people. And part of that presentation may involve me giving a prayer in my language, so when I was when I was and they said, oh, however you want to do it is fine. You know, we respect the work that you're doing. And I was talking to a colleague, and she was saying, do you think maybe you shouldn't speak in the traditional way? Maybe you should take out some things. And I was looking at her, and I was saying, are you serious? Don't you think that already has been enough of that has been done? If we were given opportunities and spaces where we present ourselves in our authenticity, why would you not do that? Why would you not? We're trying to move forward. We're trying to t- uh, take control of our narratives. We're trying to present ourselves in the way that we want to be seen and heard. So again, I think it's really imperative. It's so important to have that self-love, to really believe that how you see yourself. And if you haven't done that, if you don't have that self-awareness, if you don't have that self-love, if you're still working on a deficiency of yourself, then that's problematic. So I'm not sure. I can't remember what the question was, Brother Bay.
No.
I'm
It's perfectly fine. I think you are perfectly in line, even with what we were discussing before, which is about really raising your head high in the crowd and saying, "This is my name." You need to represent yourself. You need to. Uh, um, yeah. Okay. Go on. If you
I
want to
think
ask.
because one of the things that I also said I was going to talk about was the challenges and misconceptions around African spirituality, and a lot of the Western stereotypes and biases in understanding who we are, and the fact that we already have we had sophisticated systems that were in place pre any of the things that are there today. And when I was telling the people that this is how I was planning on presenting, I could see the curiosity, almost not disbelief, but just the fact that a lot of the biases that and stereotypes that already are on the ground, that this is an opportunity to hear something different, that they didn't know about before. And I thought to myself, this is more than just myself. This is something I'm representing. My people, I'm representing my ancestors. I'm putting down, laying down the diasporic literature, in my own small way. So there's a commitment I have. Any space, where I am, that is appropriate, because I take note of what Dr. Marcia had said, that you have to know where to say, what to say, how to say it. But there's a part that I'm any of these spaces where I go now, I tell myself, and I've said this many times, that I'm going not just as one person. I'm going with my ancestors. I'm going with other Africans. I've got, all within me. I'm representing in a different way, and I feel if I'm given that opportunity, I have no right, not to present in that way. I hope that
Yeah.
speaks to it somewhat.
Yeah. It speaks to it. It speaks to it. Uh, I was interviewing an expert one time in Obehi podcast. We were talking about the high rate of suicide among young people. Then I was, of course, I had to inject some African idea into it. Somehow among us, it is believed that your life wasn't supposed to be taken just as your personal life. No, that is why in the traditional African society, community suicide is not something that is very common, because you are supposed to share it. it belongs to the entire community, even your whole life, because we live by sharing. That is what it entirely is about. Chuno Achebe was being interviewed on CNN, and somebody was saying that he is the father of African literature, and he said something to the effect that where African literature belongs to the African people, I cannot be the father of African literature, something like that. So what that also means is that we are sharing this culture. And I'm saying that to me, that what Mrs. Gloria was talking about before, that when she is speaking, she feels that she is speaking for more than just for herself. She's not speaking only for herself. She's speaking for something bigger than just herself, because that is highly enshrined in our culture. And when we are talking about the diaspora storytelling now, that will reflect itself. Because some other persons might not see it this way, but it's okay. It is on you to help them understand that where you are not there, you are you, because you are coming from a different kind of culture, a different kind of understanding. This is how it is seen in your place, in your culture, in what you represent. So I think that is fundamentally important. All right, we have spent enough time today. So I want to pass to Dr. Marcia. So Dr. Marcia, what will be your final take here in this conversation? And remember to tell the people how to find your work. Please go ahead.
Yes. My final thoughts on this conversation would have to be that diasporic literature is important for us to shape the future. And as you have just said, we do not speak for ourselves, we speak for those who we join those who have gone before with those who have come behind us. And we make them remain faithful. And we also allow them to build and to understand and appreciate the story that they are now telling, because they are able to connect the dots and merge their story, their experience, and their life with their origin, and also be able to navigate the present and prepare for the future. And so the literature in itself must be preserved and it must be kept, as I said before, as an important part of your DNA as it relates to the threads and the cords that bind us to who we are, how we are to represent ourselves, and how we are to empower others to be faithful when they come behind us. We must also find it in ourselves to be able to help others to frame their stories, their identity, and their authenticity. And we must support them to unapologetically present who they are at every table that they have to appear, and in every form and context that they have, with enough self control and enough, as I would say, because self control is important, and with enough self discipline and with enough respect for difference, and in such a way that it increases the engagement of those whose attention they would need to attract, and the participation of those who must embrace change. I can be found at drtpmotivate2.com, which is my website. I can also be contacted at drtpmotivate2 at gmail.com. And my newsletter, my blog, and also my books can be found on Amazon, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook.
Thank you so much for that. All right. I pass the mic to Mrs. Gloria. Please share with the people what would be your final take and how can they please find you?
Well, I concur with everything that has been said so far. Just to reiterate again that, diasporic literature reflects experiences, struggles, and triumphs, and cultural identities. So it's really important. It acts as a bridge between cultures, facilitating cross cultural exchange. So it's really important that people embrace their stories. you know uh n- we're all very unique, and all our stories are important. However formation, however they look, they are our authentic stories, and it's important. Write down your stories, write down, have notebooks, Write down things about your parts of your life. Things these are how these stories are built and come together. Talk to other people. Hear your brothers and sisters' stories. Encourage them to tell their stories. We're at a time and place where uh, this literature, this information, these stories, narratives need to be documented. They need to be heard. We need to talk as we're doing in these audio rooms, hear each other, hear how other people's journeys have been, because it's really important that we make our mark at this time and place. We're at a very pivotal time in the world, and as we can see, other cultures, other people are telling their stories, they're making their voices heard. We need to do the same. I can be found on LinkedIn. I'm offering a 5-day free introduction to ancestral healing, debunking the myths and misinformation around this important lost process, our traditions that lead us to claim our divine strengths gifts. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm also, my website is gloriaogumbadejo.com. I would love to hear from you. Thank you all very much.
Thank you so
Alafia.
much. Eshe. All right. Thank you so much for that.